Today is June 2nd. Welcome to Big Book Daily. My name is Rob. I am an alcoholic. It's a thrill, honor, and joy to be here with you today as we journey through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. Today, out of the core text of the Big Book, we are going to continue our journey through Chapter 7, Working with Others, by reading pages 100 and 101. And out of the personal stories, we're going to be reading from They Lost Nearly All, story number 4, Listening to the Wind, page 460. And once again, I've been a little overzealous with the reading in the 12 and 12. I had to finish out that last paragraph on 159. So we're technically ahead of the game, so there will be no reading today out of the 12 and 12. But again, that's all my fault, not nobody else's. So we've been given a brand new set of 24 hours. Hey, we're in a brand new month now, and hey, we get to decide today who we want to be. So let's go ahead and press on, and let's get to the good stuff. All right, my friends, so if you recall from yesterday's reading out of Working with Others, one of the main things that was definitely apparent is to remind the fellow alcoholic that his recovery is not dependent upon people, but instead it's dependent upon his relationship with God. And that's kind of what this program is all about. The strengthening of our relationship with a higher power, whatever we conceive that higher power to be, through the 12 steps. So we're going to continue that idea on page 100 and 101. Both you and the new man must walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress. If you persist, remarkable things will happen. When we look back, we realize that the things which came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands were better than anything we could have planned. Follow the dictates of a higher power, and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances. When working with a man and his family, you should take care not to participate in their quarrels. You may spoil your chance of being helpful if you do, but urge upon a man's family that he has been a very sick person and should be treated accordingly. You should warn against arousing resentment or jealousy. You should point out that his defects of character are not going to disappear overnight. Show them that he has entered upon a period of growth. Ask them to remember, when they are impatient, the blessed fact of his sobriety. If you have been successful in solving your own domestic problems, tell the newcomer's family how that was accomplished. In this way, you can set them on the right track without becoming critical of them. The story of how you and your wife settled your difficulties is worth any amount of criticism. Assuming we are spiritually fit, we can do all sorts of things alcoholics are not supposed to do. People have said that we must not go anywhere where liquor is served. We must not have it in our homes. We must shun friends who drink. We must avoid moving pictures which show drinking scenes. We must not go into bars. Our friends must hide their bottles if we go to their houses. We mustn't think or be reminded about alcohol at all. Our experience shows that that is not necessarily so. We meet these conditions every day. An alcoholic who cannot meet them still has an alcoholic mind. There is something the matter with his spiritual status. His only chance for sobriety would be some place like the Greenland ice cap. And even there, an Eskimo might turn up with a bottle of scotch and ruin everything. Ask any woman who has sent her husband to distant places on the theory that he would escape the alcohol problem. In our belief, any scheme of combating alcoholism which proposes to shield the sick man from temptation is doomed to failure. If the alcoholic tries to shield himself, he may succeed for a time, but he usually winds up with a bigger explosion than ever. We've tried these methods. These attempts to do the impossible have always failed. So our rule is not to avoid a place where there is drinking, if we have a legitimate reason for being there. That includes bars, nightclubs, dances, receptions, weddings, even plain ordinary whoopee parties. To a person who has had experience with an alcoholic, this may seem like tempting providence, but it isn't. You will note that we made an important qualification. Therefore, ask yourselves on each occasion, have I any good social, business, or personal reason for going to this place? Or am I expecting to steal a little vicarious pleasure from the atmosphere of such places? If you answer these questions satisfactorily, you need have no apprehension. Go or stay away, whichever seems best. But be sure that you're on solid spiritual ground before you start and that your motive in going is thoroughly good. Do not think of what you will get out of this occasion. Think of what you can bring to it. But if you're shaky, you better work with another alcoholic instead. All right, some very practical advice here. Definitely want to come back to this in just a minute. So if you recall from yesterday's reading in this personal story called Listening to the Wind, man, my heart breaks for this woman who she started drinking at an early age. I believe she wanted to be a musician. She kind of goes out on her own and ends up becoming a prostitute. And of course, she's drinking throughout the day to kind of forget what she does to pay the bills. And keep in mind, she's also very young. And one particular day, she is brutally beaten. I mean, basically left to die. Extremely sad. And I'm sure that our narrator here at some point just felt worthless and guilty and shameful. And she's been treated as such. But she's not. And obviously her story is in this book for a reason. There's a God story in this. And we're going to continue on page 460 and learn a little bit more about her story. The judge said that I could not be rehabilitated, and I was charged with 18 counts of felony. I would not see the streets again for nearly 26 months. I was 17 years old. The first few months, I would have done just about anything for a drink. I knew I was powerless over the drugs, but I really couldn't see what harm there was in alcohol. In the summer, I was released. I wasn't sure where I was going, but a nice cold beer sure sounded like a refreshing celebration of freedom. I bought a 6-pack and a bus ticket. When I got off the bus, I got a waitressing job in a bar. By the end of my first shift, however, I had enough money to get a bottle in a sleazy motel room nearby. A few weeks later, I saw him, the only Indian I had met in a very long time. He was leaning over a pool table when I came to work. I put on my apron, grabbed the tray, and headed straight for him to see if he needed a refill. "Who let you off the reservation?" he asked. I was furious, humiliated, and embarrassed. The man became the father of my firstborn child. My relationship with him lasted only a few months, and was the first of many mutually abusive relationships that would continue over the next few years. I found myself alone, drunk, homeless, and pregnant in a matter of weeks. Afraid that I would wind up back in jail, I went to live with my brother and sister-in-law. My brother had gotten a very good job and moved to Hawaii. My son was born there, and on the day of his birth, I found my purpose in life. I was born to be a mom. He was beautiful. Straight black hair and dark eyes. I never felt like this in my life. I could put my past behind me once again and move forward into a new life with my child. Alright, so kind of heartbreaking story here. So she finds somebody that's like her, a fellow Native American, comes up to him, with all this hope, and clearly he disrespects her and uses her. And I know she says the relationship's mutually abusive, so it was just unhealthy from the start. But something good has come from it, and that is her son. And I'm telling you, being a father myself, kids are an absolute game changer. They really are. And now we finally see that she's got a sense of direction, and we will explore that a little bit more tomorrow. Going back to the core text real fast. First things first, I think this is on page 100. As we're working with another person, and maybe we're talking to their family, but, again, this is just to anyone. It says here in the middle of the page, you should warn against arousing resentment or jealousy. You should point out that his defects of character are not going to disappear overnight. I've said this several times on the podcast, years of pattern behavior, a lot of times they take time. I think I've told this story before, but when I was a kid, way back in Deptford, New Jersey, I think the Best Buy is still there. But anyways, my sister and I, we lived on this dead end street, and we would build these paths across the woods that would eventually lead to the parking lot at Best Buy. And, every now and then I would just walk to Best Buy. And, but my point is, a lot of times building these new paths across the woods, at first there is no path. You're getting cut up. You're really having to walk with purpose, very carefully, watching every foot forward, so you don't fall over things, get cut, scrape with thorns, whatever. But the more you start going down this new path, the path starts to settle in. The more you get used to it. But it takes time. It takes walking down that new path over and over and over again before it becomes a path that you're used to and comfortable with. Well, that's like sobriety for me. At first, saying these prayers for my resentments or taking this inventory or whatever it is seems so foreign and so strange. But the more and more you do it, or making that pause when you're frustrated, getting down your knees and praying, the more I do it, the more it becomes effective in my life. But once again, my friends, these character defects, they don't disappear overnight. There are still some things that I wrestle with to this day, but it keeps me humble and it keeps me seeking. And I claim spiritual progress over spiritual perfection. And then finally, I love this. Remember what we say about those good old italics. So for our friend that might be out there wanting to hang around the bar, there's nothing wrong with that. We can't live with a cover over our eyes, shielding ourselves from alcohol. It's there. It's everywhere, right? You cut on the TV, you see commercials. I mean, it's everywhere. You get invited to a party, it's going to be there, most likely. So the thing is, it says right here on 101 toward the bottom, so our rule is not to avoid a place where there is drinking. Here's our italics. If we have a legitimate reason for being there. So then further down, have I any good social, business, or personal reason for going to this place? Or am I expecting to steal a little vicarious pleasure from the atmosphere? It depends on our motives, right? It's always healthy to check our motive in any decision we make. Am I doing this for selfish reasons, or am I being selfless here? And then finally it says, be sure that you're on solid spiritual ground before you start, and that your motive in going is thoroughly good. That's very practical advice right there. If we're still a little shaky, probably not the best idea to hang around a bar. But if we are spiritually sound and we have a legitimate reason for being there, whether it's a family member's party or something like that you really want to go to, or a wedding or something like that, I've always heard the tricks, from people far wiser than me. Like, always have a way out when you get there. So if you do have the temptation to drink, you can get out of there. Or take a friend with you that understands your issue. Or have a drink of Coke or water in your hands at all times. Little things like that you hear. But I think the biggest one that the big book's trying to make a point of is make sure that you feel spiritually fit. Before you even go, and make sure you check your motive here. So that's all we have time for today, my friends. I hope you have a great day. As always, I don't speak on behalf of AA or NA or Al-Anon, any sect or denomination. I'm just a guy, just a friend in recovery, and I am so glad that you're here with me. If we were given another set of 24 hours, my friends, I look forward to seeing you all back here tomorrow.